Hi there, in this video, I'll do the newest May 23 economics exam paper 2. Actually, this paper is for HL, so it may include some contents that are not taught in SL. Anywho, I hope this video content will be a bit of help to your productive economics revision. Then let's get started with the main business, shall we? All right, economics high level paper 2. Don't forget to check the guiding information, especially we are requested to answer one question, unlike paper 3, and a maximum mark 40. All right, checked. 2 questions will be given, and you're supposed to choose one from these 2. But for the sake of the thorough revision, I'm going to answer all of them. Question number 1 is giving us the thorough information about the Mexican economy, the overview information, text A. Text B is about its upcoming, also ongoing free trade agreement. Text C is about the efforts of improving banking sector, especially to the lower income people. And table 1, economic data, GDP, per capita, balance of trade, things like that. Table 2 is about the development stage related data. Okay. From 2 mini questions will be always asked to define key economics terms. It is asking us to list 2 functions of IMF, International Monetary Funds. Okay, the very first function it has is promoting international monetary cooperation. Second is to provide loans to countries in financial difficulties. These are the 2 functions. Following question asks, define the term remittances indicated in bold in the text. Remittances, quite simple. It refers to the money being transferred from foreign workers to their home country, such as, for example, if Malaysians are working in Singapore and they earn their income in Singapore. If they send some of their income to their home country, which is Malaysia, then from the perspective of the Malaysian government, those money being flowed into their country will be remittances. Using information from table 1 and 2, calculate the value of Mexico's GDP in US dollars in 2019. I know GDP per capita in 2019, which is this one. And I also know the population in 2019. Then if I multiply these 2, then I can get the pure value of GDP, which is going to be this much dollars. Sketch a minimum wage diagram to show the possible effect of a minimum wage on unemployment in Mexico. Minimum wage refers to the legal wage level where has to be set above the equilibrium level. Therefore, it is going to be burdensome to the producers. In other words, it's going to cause unemployment. Here we have the diagram. So this is the previous wage level, but the minimum wage has been set above the equilibrium. So it is causing surplus, which is called unemployment in the labor market. C, using a business cycle diagram, explain how automatic stabilizers will affect the decrease in real GDP that occurs during a recession. Automatic stabilizers refer to the fact that without the new policy measures introduced by the government, the economy will self-correct itself. However, it is not as dramatic or not as impactful as it would be done by the government's new policy, obviously. I'm going to explain what I have just rambled. Here we go. The point B refers to the recession with the automatic stabilizers. There will be lower tax revenue collected or higher unemployment benefits and transport payment provided, which will result in self-correction in the end, according to the automatic stabilizers. But what I want to emphasize is that such a recession may go deeper and may last longer compared to the time when there will be government intervention introduced. Question D, using a demand and supply diagram, explain why the price of oil will probably continue to fall. Okay, I think it's going to be better to explain first. Here we go. As it is mentioned from text to A, paragraph 3, there is an increase in alternative energy sources, in other words, substitute, which will incentivize and boost the production of such type of alternative energy with lower prices, so that the demand of the traditional type of energy source, which is oil, is going to decrease its popularity. Therefore, I think I can present such idea with a diagram. Energy market diagram, demand decreases, things like that. Pretty obvious. Yeah, demand shift to the left. Using question E, using a J-curve diagram, explain the likely reason why the change in the exchange rate for the peso initially caused the deficit on the balance of trade to widen and then eventually led to a surplus. Okay, let me bring the J-curve first and then explain the rest of the ideas. J-curve looks like this: y-axis surplus, zero deficit, and the x-axis is going to be about the timeline as time goes by. In the beginning, the deficit is getting worse. However, as time goes by, the deficit will gradually recover to the level until surplus will be recorded. Why? If I explain, according to the J-curve and the Marshall and Lerner condition, in the short run, in other words, here, the sum of PDs for export and import were less than 1. In other words, people don't really know, both foreigners and domestic consumers, they don't really know what happened to the product prices, or they are lacking time to find the proper alternatives within the short term, so that their PDs are inelastic in the short term. In the long run, both goods consumers start to respond to the depreciation. Therefore, the export increase and import decrease, which will result in trade surplus. Next question. Using a poverty cycle diagram, explain how the expanding rural finance project raises incomes in rural areas. Okay, let me introduce the poverty cycle first. So poverty cycle refers to the vicious cycle where the people in low-income countries and the people in poverty will inevitably experience low productivity, and it is again going to lead in the low investment on education or capital, something more productive. That's not going to be done. Therefore, the poverty and low income will be persisting, and it is keep working on in this vicious cycle. So someone has to do something to cut this cycle, So in this sense, how the expanding rural finance project, in other words, providing some loans and credits, allowing them to access more financial sector, how can it cut the vicious cycle? How can it improve the vicious cycle? Let's give it a go. The increase the access to finance or banking means that there will be more investment or spending on capital and education. So people borrow money to get higher education, or businessmen borrow money to build factories or start more productive production or things like that. So it will somehow break the cycle and result in higher income and less poverty. So this cycle should be cut in somewhere. Last question. Using information from the text, data, and your knowledge of economics, discuss the costs and benefits for Mexico of participation in the free trade agreement with the US and Canada. All right. What do I have to write in the introduction is as usual, such as I need to write down some definition of free trade agreement. Also, I can make the introduction smoother by writing about some overall economic situation of the country, which is Mexico. And then I'm going to identify the fact that for the rest of the following body paragraphs, I'm going to discuss the potential pros of joining the FTA and potential cons of the FTA as well. So that's done in the introduction. Body one, I'm going to focus on possible cost first. By joining the FTA, what are some losing points that the country may experience? I'm going to bring all the data from the given information from the text. What is worrying is the worsening inequality between the region where one is focusing on the manufacturing industry, the other is focusing on the agricultural industry. So if you join the FTA and you focus more on the manufacturing sector, then your inequality between two different regions can be worsened, as I can find from the evidence from the data, text B and text C. Second concern is that some sectors which cannot compete with the competitive import would cause higher domestic unemployment, which means if tax-free foreign products are flowing into their country and then some domestic goods are not able to compete with them, then they're going to lose their production competitiveness and it will cause higher unemployment within the sector. Thirdly, potential negative externalities are expected because of excessive economic activity. To be more specific, US and Canadian companies setting up factories in Mexico, maybe it's going to cause some of exploitation of workers or environmental degradation, things like that, as I can find from the evidence from text B. And the last cost that I would love to point out is that even though in the first sense, it sounds like such a good news to have more foreign companies to work operating in this country. However, most of the core profit of these foreign companies will be sent back to their home countries, which means Mexico would be highly likely to be just left alone with nothing much benefits. That's the worry. Nonetheless, I want to be more objective. I'm not going to deny the possible benefits of participating in this FTA. So first of all, one potential benefit that the country can enjoy is that the country is able to increase exports of goods other than oil, because the country has been focusing too much on oil exports. So it can diversify the export items, which is good news. And with the same logic, we can say the country can gain a surplus on the balance of trade since it is able to increase exports, which means it's going to somehow improve the current trade deficit. Thirdly, more foreign companies are operating in this country, building factories or starting new businesses, then it means higher FDI. And foreign firms are operating in this country and then hire more people. And overall, US and Canada provide higher wage level compared to the country itself. So the wage level can be higher. Also, as a result of such higher wages or improved working conditions or things like that, it's going to somehow affect the HDI and Gini coefficient positively, improving the standard of living in general. Lastly, I want to point out the fact that lower tariffs, thanks to the FTA, will result in efficiency when it comes to the production, and it's going to make the resource allocation more productive, blah, blah, blah. So that's economically more viable, I want to say. All right, these are the contents that I'm going to write for the 15 marker essay. Question number 2. It's about the country, Indonesia, and text D is giving us the information about the overview information. The country is mainly focusing on palm oil production. And text E is talking about the sustainable development goal the country is considering to adopt to make the palm oil production more sustainable. Text F, what are the barriers? And table 3 is the typical economic data, GDP, capital, budget deficit, current account balance, things like that. And just like the Mexico's information, here we've got the development stage data 2, population growing, income. So the situation is getting better. Gini coefficient. Okay. GDP, GNI, yes. A1, the typical definition question. Define the term profit indicated in bold in the text. All right, profit, very simple. Profit is the net income earned from the business performance, which can be calculated by total revenue minus total cost. That's enough. A2, define the term property right indicated in bold in the text. Yes. Having property right means you have the legal right or legal authority to own a certain property of your own, such as land, house, or things like that. And it's going to let you determine how to use such property. That's the property rights. B1, using information from table 5, calculate net factor income from abroad for Indonesia. Net factor income is going to be calculated from these two data, data, GNI minus GDP. So it's going to be, so this one, which means the value is going to be minus, in other words, minus $34 million, I want to say. $34 million. B2, sketch an ADAS diagram showing how the change in the balance of trade in goods from 2010 to 19 is likely to have affected in real GDP. All right, 2010 to 19 and balance of trade. 2010 and 19 balance of trade. Wow. Balance of trade is getting worse. It is earning less and less from exporting. So I can see that net export is going to decrease, which is going to decrease the one of the elements of AD. So AD will shift to the left. C, using a demand and supply diagram, explain the effect of a subsidy on the market for palm oil-based biodiesel. Okay, if you get subsidy, that's a good news. So you're gonna be motivated to produce more of them. So let me draw the diagram first. The market gets subsidy. So the supply shift to the right with the subsidy. Therefore, price decreases, quantity increases. Since the supply both reduces cost and incentivizes firms, the supply increases, causing the price to fall and the quantity to increase. Next question, using an exchange rate diagram, explain how a rise in palm oil prices may cause an appreciation of the Indonesian rupiah. Okay, it's quite straightforward idea. If price of what you export increases, then from the foreigner's perspective, they need to buy the same product by paying more to your country. Your currency quantity demand would increase, so it's going to appreciate. To buy the same product, but you have to pay more quantity of money because prices are increasing, so the demand of rupiah will increase. It is explained as I said. Next question. E, using an international trade diagram, explain the effect of the EU tariff on the imports of palm oil-based biodiesel from Indonesia. That's not going to be good news to the EU consumers because the palm oil prices are going to increase with the tariff. So if I put such idea into a diagram, yeah, let's have a look. So this is the previous world price of palm oil, but then tariff is given, so it's going to increase the palm oil price with the tariff. So what happens is that it used to be able to import the palm oil from Q1 to Q4. However, with the tariff, the new equilibrium has been found here. So only Q2 to Q3 will be the after tariff imports. And the domestic supply will increase from 0 to Q1 here to 0 to Q2. Anywho, what that means was the tariff causes higher prices of imported goods, causing a decrease in imports as quantity demanded decreases, or rather domestic quantity supplied increases. In other words, it used to be Q1 to Q4 of the imports, as I just said, but it is decreasing to Q2 to Q3. Yes. F. Using a Lorentz curve diagram, explain how the distribution of income changed in Indonesia between 2010 and 19. I think I briefly talked about the income distribution with the Gini coefficient, which is getting worse, I believe. 2019 Lorentz curve shifting to the right, indicating the more unequal distribution of income. And then I'm going to explain them in words. There is an increase in the Gini coefficient, and it implies that the country's distribution of income has become more unequal, shifting the Lorentz curve to the right. Yes. Last question, using information from the text, data, and your knowledge of economics, discuss whether there is a conflict between meeting Sustainable Development Goal 12 and the objective of economic growth in Indonesia. So it asks us to discuss whether there is a conflict or not, which means first I need to talk about when possibly there will be some conflict. And next, I'm going to talk about not necessarily, there will be no conflict when it comes to achieving these two goals at the same time, things like that. So from the introduction, I do the same thing, which is defining key terms with first economic growth and next sustainable growth. And I'm going to briefly talk about the potential conflicts of such macroeconomic objectives for the country Indonesia, things like that. And then body one, I'm going to focus on the idea that how and in what ways there can be conflicts between economic growth, which is one of the macroeconomic objectives, and the goal of achieving SDG 12. The country has to achieve economic growth by producing more palm oil, and at the same time, it has to somehow make it more sustainable by changing its production method. But the thing is, demand from the world countries are still growing, which means the country for the moment has to make money with the traditional way of producing palm oil, which can be a conflict between the economic growth and the sustainable development goal. Second conflict between the economic growth from exporting and producing a lot of palm oil and the SDG goal achievement is negative production externalities of palm oil production is expected. So not only the deforestation, the illegal clearing is the problem that can last quite a while because of the country's lack of property rights protection. Not only the production side, but also the consumption side causing some externalities as well. Too much consumption of palm oil can cause lots of pollution or things like that. That's the consumption side externality. And government has to spend huge amounts of expenditure when it comes to supporting such transition. That is going to be huge opportunity cost. And the production itself is quite volatile in terms of its PD and PES, both of them. So yeah, that's the conflict. When it comes to considering the economic growth resulting from the current way of palm oil production, the export itself can be not very sustainable, to be honest, because more and more countries are concerned about the sustainability when it comes to producing and supplying and even purchasing certain products. Therefore, the Indonesian production can be a bit of deterrence when it comes to keeping the sustainable exports. Second body, I'm going to talk about the fact that I'm going to talk about the other side of the idea, which means, yes, the country can achieve both goals at the same time without conflict. In other words, how and in what ways there can be no conflict between economic growth and sustainable development goals. So first, I want to point out the idea that manufacturing palm oil-based diesel, which will be better for the environment. Also, palm oil production provides jobs which can contribute to the sustainable growth and improving the Gini coefficient and HDI index or things like that. So while they are achieving economic growth, with the palm oil production. At the same time, they can continue to improve their sustainable economic growth by improving Gini coefficient and HDI index. And thirdly, if they keep continuing the palm oil production, well, the higher export revenue will result in higher tax revenue for the government, which can be spent for improving the general well-being and then development of the country. Also, Indonesia is currently extending the IPSO certification system to even to the small-scale farmers, which is an effort to improve the production facility to be more sustainable and eco-friendly, you know. So in the end, if the system is well established, then the production system itself can be more efficient and eco-friendly, so it can achieve both of the goals. Lastly, multinational companies that are purchasing the palm oil from Indonesia, they are exerting the deforestation stop agenda to the country. So it has been a working pressure to the Indonesian government. So I guess it can be a boosting factor when it comes to making the production more sustainable. All I have to do is to put all these ideas into decent sentences. All right, this is the end of economics paper 2. I hope this will be a bit of help when it comes to making your economics revision more productive. Thank you so much. I'll see you with more paper revision videos anytime soon. Thank you. Bye.